sometimes movies are just plain old-fashioned fantasies. They are not complex, they are just living out something that people want to be. In James Bond, you've got a guy who is handsome, by all accounts he's wealthy, he goes to the most exotic places in the world, stays in the most exotic hotels, drives the most exotic cars, wears incredible clothes. When he is not betting the most gorgeous women on the planet, he is beating up bad guys with ease, always victorious, fighting for something that he believes in 100%, always turns out to be right and receives praise from both mother and father figure. James Bond is a male fantasy. It hits all the things that you would expect a male to want, and it does so unambiguously. Now, Big Little Lies is a TV show that's based on a book. It's a book I haven't read, but the TV show I've watched a few episodes of. It's starring some of the most heralded actresses on Earth. It's got Nicole Kidman, it's got Reese Witherspoon, it's got Laura Dern, who isn't as celebrated, though I think she gets a lot more credit nowadays after A Marriage Story and a couple of other roles that she had, but she was great in Marriage Story. It's also got one of the Skarsgårds, the son, the younger one, Alexander, I think it's Alexander, and some guys that I've never seen before, and that girl who was in The Fault in Our Stars. I never saw that movie, but I know she was in it. Anyway, so it's got a lot of people in it, and it's based on a book, and it's about a well-to-do community of married women and men and the escalating dramas between them. So you've got the main girl, who is the one from The Fault in Our Stars, Shailene Woodley, that's who it is. And she has just come to this community, and she's unmarried, but she is taken under wing by Reese Witherspoon, who's got a big personality, we'll say. She's one of the members of the community who is bold and outspoken. Then there's Nicole Kidman, who has a very handsome and wealthy husband, but they have a dark aspect to their relationship. And Shailene Woodley, she has a dark past that isn't immediately revealed, but, you get little trickles of what happened as you go on. She has a son, too, who is having trouble at school. So anyway, most of the show is made up by the drama between all of the wives in this community. Like Reese Witherspoon, she's got this issue where she's constantly talking about her ex-husband and referencing him and bringing things up about him to her new husband, who is the guy from Parks and Rec, not Skylord or whatever his name is from Guardians of the Galaxy, but one of the other guys. But she's always bringing him up. So this creates tension within her marriage. Is that the one that got away? Is that the one you really love and you just took me as your silver medal? Then you've got Laura Dern, who's extremely, accomplished, and they're very well-to-do. Her and her husband have this massive business, and she's known as, the corporate powerful woman in the community. And then you've got Nicole Kidman. They've got a couple of kids. One of the kids is an older girl. She's like, 16, 17 or something like that. So she's going through all the kinds of things you would expect at that age. But Nicole Kidman and her husband, the Skarsgård, they actually get into physical fights. And it's one of the things that is appealing to them, because they'll get into these actual physical fights that are pretty brutal. And then they'll make up by having sex on the other side. And this is something she has to later explicitly talk about how, it's something that turns us on, which is dumb. They shouldn't have done that, but that's one aspect of their relationship. So by the time we get to this point in where I'm watching it, I think I've watched like 3 episodes, but they're going to counseling and they're trying to deal with this. But it is nice because in the counseling, they don't explicitly say that they're actually getting physical with each other, because he leaves bruises on her and he hits her in the face, and there are very significant things like that are occurring, that ought not be occurring in a relationship. So there you go. You've got these different couples that are interacting with each other, and their kids go to school together, so they'll have conflicts based on that. Like one of them was the kids don't want to go to, or one of the wealthy kids, Laura Dern's kid, is having a birthday party, but they don't want to invite Shailene Woodley's kid because he was accused of choking one of the girls. And Reese Witherspoon has taken Shailene Woodley under her wing and said, we're friends, and if he's not invited, then my kids aren't going, which is a faux pas, because if they don't show up, then a bunch of the other kids aren't going to show up because they're like part of a clique. And so there's this big to-do about the party's not going to be as good. And there's, oh my gosh, okay, I tried to stick with it as long as I could, just explaining what the show is about. But that's what it is. It's just women whining constantly. They're just whining about this social stuff all the time. And the hilarious thing is all of the men are these neutered, ridiculous caricatures of men who are just sitting there and listening to every damn word that comes out of these women's mouths about a bunch of nonsense. Like Laura Dern, these are two very high-powered people. Her and her husband. She is going on and on and on about this birthday party that she's worried about. Reese Witherspoon's kids not showing up to the birthday party, what that's going to mean for the quality of the party, and all this other nonsense. And the thing that annoys me is that the men, they just sit there. They listen to absolutely every single thing that they say. And it's not a matter of, it's not like, oh my God, woman, why do you care about these things? Why does it matter to you? Do we have to talk about this? We have things to do. No, they will sit there, even at work, they will sit there and just listen to every single word that comes out of her mouth and just be hooked onto it and do everything they can to be emotionally supportive and helpful about all of these ridiculous things. Even when, what's her name's Reese Witherspoon's husband had very good reason to believe that she was still interested in her ex, and she kept bringing him up and talking about him and all that stuff. And so he gets mad about it, and he's like, okay, well, what do you just want to be with him? What is the deal? Am I really your silver medal? And he just goes off finally about this stuff. But still, it doesn't turn into, it's not like him actually berating her or taking his own agency in this context. It really just blows over and he accepts it, and she just kind of moves on and does the things that she needs to do. And every time, like, this movie could be totally summed up in a woman standing there looking out the window, just talking about whatever she wants to talk about for 20 minutes, and a guy just neutered sitting there in a little, like, feeble, weak position, just trying to do everything that he can to reassure her and emotionally validate everything that she says. And this is all capped. This was one of the most ridiculous scenes I've seen in television. This was all capped by this therapy scene. They're going to couples therapy. It's Nicole Kidman and Alexander Skarsgård. Now, he's one of the best looking guys out there. He's, rich and interesting. He could have pretty much any woman on planet Earth. She is, gorgeous. It's Nicole Kidman, but she's also like 55. And so it's just a little ridiculous at this point. So they're in this counseling, and this couple's counseling, and they're talking about things, and they're talking about, we get into fights, and they say that they're not physical, but they are, but they say we get into fights, and we're not sure what's going on. So the therapist asks, okay, so what do you think it is, or something like that to him, and he's like, oh God, it's, I'm just so worried that she's gonna leave me. She's so amazing and so beautiful and just the best woman who has ever lived. And so I'm so terrified that she's going to leave me. Being so incredible, she could have any man on planet Earth, and I'm terrified that she's going to leave me. So that just bothers me so much. And I'm like, oh my God, could this anymore be a female fantasy? That, okay, all the men, all the wealthy to-do men who let the women just do whatever they want, they can spend whatever they want, they do what they want with the children, etc., etc., but they also just sit there like neutered dogs, listening to whatever she has to say, never pushing back, never questioning her, always being supportive and emotionally validating. And then when they get to therapy, where they're supposed to be as emotionally open and direct and everything and honest as humanly possible, what does he say? He says, I'm just so terrified because she's so amazing. She's the most amazing thing. I know that I'm in incredible shape. I'm really handsome. I'm wealthy. I'm funny. I'm interesting. I know I'm all these things, but my God, if I ever lose her, I don't know what I would do. I could never have another woman because she is so perfect and amazing. Jesus Christ. And so now, looking at this in this way, it makes me appreciate any criticism of like James Bond or all the action movies that used to come out in the 90s where the man was just so capable and good looking and all the women wanted him and all of that. It's something as base as Jack Reacher, which I loved the first season of Jack Reacher. It was so cool and it was awesome seeing the guy who was perfectly cast as that character be awesome in this little town and beat all these people up and shoot all these people and all that. I don't remember a lick of the plot or any intellectual anything that ever came out of that show. but I remember he was handsome and he beat up a lot of people and he got the girl at the end and then moved on with his life. I remember all those things. So I understand that criticism, but my God, this is the female version 100% of just that extremely simple wish fulfillment. What do they really want? What do women really, really want? They want a man who's going to give them the resources that they think they deserve. So they're going to be set on that front. They can spend as much money as they want whenever they want. There are no restrictions on that. Like, the guy never lords it over her, never says, oh, I'm the one who makes the money, so you can't buy this or you can't do that. He never does that. So they want the guy who's going to give them all the resources that they want. They want a guy who's going to be kind of pathetically neutered, that she can run circles around and never have to worry about having to really put a lot of effort into manipulating. He's just going to listen and be emotionally validating all the time. He's not going to put himself first. It's not going to be his primary interests where he's trying to accomplish something and therefore she has to be subordinated. No, that's never going to happen. For instance, when he was traveling, he was on business and he had been whining multiple times. If you look at it, if you just look at it in terms of how often is she rhetorically given the power in the relationship and how often is he given the power? Like in this instance, he was whining about the fact that she kept telling him not to come to this or not to come to that family-related thing. Like, oh, no, you don't have to come up, when we're taking them to school for the first day. You stay here and I'll take them to the school. And so in each instance, though, she was the one doing the dictating. He wasn't saying like, no, I'm going to do this and that's the way it is. I'm the father and I can do whatever the hell I want. It was like, you didn't let me. You didn't let me go to their first day. You didn't let me do this with the kids. You don't let me have these experiences with the family. And he's throwing a fit about these things. And some of these things are what lead to the actual physical confrontations. Notice these are ridiculous premises for having a physical confrontation between these people, but whatever. So anyway, they get to the point where he's on a business trip and he is gone, some distant place. And instead of him going and finding some chick in a bar, to bang or whatever, which is what a realistic toxic man would do. And I'm not advocating that. I'm saying that that's what a real character would be tempted to do in that context. He makes sure to call her on video and wants to get a striptease from her, so he can jerk off and they can keep everything within that. But still, she takes the power in that situation in that she's the one who cuts it off and says, that's all you're going to get. And he's just like, oh, okay, well, thank you, ma'am, for all the things you do for me. And so you see that all the time. Whenever you see the dynamic between the men who are the husbands and the women who are the wives, you see that she has the authority. She's the one who's talking. She's the one who gets validated. She's the one who has the most freedom and is not limited by the things that are going on. And most of the conflict comes from them bickering with each other over ridiculous things. The women bickering with each other because they have the authority. Now, ostensibly, this is actually a crime mystery. We don't know who's been murdered, but somebody's been murdered. And it cuts back and forth between these things. It's not poorly written or anything like that. It looks great, and it has some of the finest actors on planet Earth in the show. But you see the superficiality in it that is hilarious. And having said all that and having established all that, I don't know that it's a bad thing. I don't know that it's wrong to have some generically appealing movie or a TV series that is just going to be a straightforward wish fulfillment for women. We have that for men. Is it bad that we have those kinds of wish fulfillment things for men? Is it going to make men more inclined to expect it in certain ways, that beautiful women are going to fall all over themselves for them at any given time? That he's going to be able to be an international spy without much pushback, or he's going to be able to be a rebel and break all the rules and keep his job. You got to wonder if any of those things are going to be bad. But just like that, for women, should they have the expectation that their husband is not going to have any agency or express any authority or have any interests of their own beyond what is my wife thinking right now, or what can I do to make my wife happy? Is that a toxic thing to be inculcating into one half of the species? But by the same token, should men have had that source of this toxicity for decades and decades, and women shouldn't have? Of course, women have had that kind of thing. In the 90s, it was rom-coms that would have these caricatures of men. And especially, what was that show? Gilmore Girls. That's what it was. If you watch that show and keep in mind, okay, what is this saying about women and men? Who has the upper hand, who's getting the benefit out of this relationship, all those kinds of things, then it's hysterical how superficial and how the men are valued within that show. And it's in the midst of all this really ornate dialogue, but in reality, the way that men are valued and the way that they act, they just have one characteristic that is the amplified characteristic, and they are primarily defined by whatever their profession is, which I don't mind in general. Like, it's totally fine if women want to treat men that way, but that is the superficial way that we can look at the opposite gender. Just like when men say, oh, well, she's hot, and that's all I'm going to have to know about her. I don't need to know anything else. It's women say, okay, well, what's his job? Or has he provided the things that I want? And after that, he just becomes some kind of an ornament to me. Just like men who have the hot woman on his arm, but don't really think much of her or want to talk to her or anything like that. Women have the well-to-do man, but only want him to be validating and support her and listen to what she says and let her be the authority figure within the marriage. So, I don't know. It's really funny and interesting to me that something like that is, it's based on a book, so it should be something that's much more complex. But in reality, it really is just a really straightforward wish fulfillment for suburban women. And you could see why people would find it appealing and want to watch it for the same reason that a whole bunch of men find Jack Reacher appealing and want to watch that. So, anyway, I don't have a huge problem with it in that I think these archetypes that are undergirding these interests that we've been demonizing for so long now are actually, they're positive ones. They're things that have been developed over millions of years, and there are reasons that we have these inclinations to find these things appealing and reasons that women have the inclination to want this kind of a man. But overall, it's just hilarious that it's so superficial in that way. Anyway, that's Big Little Lies. I'm going to do a recommendation for this one, and today's recommendation is going to be Frankenstein by, it's Mary Shelley, right? The daughter of Percy Bysshe Shelley and a very accomplished, oh no, Jesus, she was married to Percy Bysshe Shelley. That wasn't her father. That's a weird Oedipal thing that I was injecting into that, but Frankenstein. It was a very interesting book and was one of the precursors to a modern genre fiction in science fiction and the like. So it's really good on its own right, even not being the inspiration for that genre. And it was one we read a while ago, but I highly recommend it. It's got some really interesting stuff in it. So anyway, Frankenstein's going to be the recommendation for today. If you've seen Big Little Liars, let me know. Let me know what you think about it. I think it's often funny. Reese Witherspoon is great. I don't know where it goes after this. I've only seen a couple of episodes, but anyway, that's Big Little Liars. I hope all is well. See you on the next one. Bye.